You know it as NutraSweet. It's in just about everything. Soft drinks, iced tea, hot chocolate, tabletop sweetener, chewing gum, cereal, pudding, ice cream, cookies, even breath mints and children's vitamins. Odds are, aspartame is part of your diet. But should it be?
It should be withdrawn from the market.
Look at this. A summary of nearly 10,000 complaints filed with the Food and Drug Administration since 1980 by people just like Edith Johnson.
I was horrified. I was panic-stricken. I was perspiring. I was scared to death on that night.
Edith says she'll never forget it.
Within a matter of moments, I went completely blind. I could not see anything.
Edith was drinking a cup of low-calorie hot chocolate that night. Aspartame made it sweet. And Johnson says aspartame made her sick.
All of a sudden, I couldn't see. My eyes went out of focus, and it was like my vision became quite blurred.
And you think it's because of aspartame?
I think it's very deliberately because of aspartame, yes.
It was terrifying.
Kate Randall thought she was going crazy.
I started popping in my hands and twitching in my feet, my legs, my knees, my upper legs, and shoulders and arms and everywhere.
Like millions of Americans, Kate Randall was a Diet Coke drinker. A big one.
9 Diet Cokes a day.
For how long?
5 years.
Every day.
Every day.
Kate developed a twitch in her eye.
And then my chin, this part of my neck, and right up by my temples started to twitch.
Kate Randall went to several doctors, but their tests were negative.
The doctors told me that it was just a glitch in my system. My first reaction was, well, it's a glitch in my system that I'm not willing to live with. And what that meant was that I was going to do my own research.
So Kate went online searching for answers. And she says what she found left her with a bitter taste for NutraSweet.
I absolutely believe that it was the breakdown of my health for 2 years.
Kate Randall isn't the only one who believes NutraSweet is dangerous. Dozens of web pages warn against the ill effects of aspartame. One of them is supported by this man, Dr. H.J. Roberts, a private physician and author of several articles and books on aspartame.
Somebody has got to put this out and say, be careful.
Roberts calls aspartame an ignored epidemic. The internist says he's treated patients who suffered severe side effects from America's favorite artificial sweetener.
The bottom line is that I have over 1,300 in my own database that people have had terrible reactions to products containing aspartame.
Dr. Olney, do you think that aspartame should be on the market today?
No.
Why not?
Because it hasn't been demonstrated to be safe.
Dr. John Olney is a researcher at Washington University in St. Louis.
I fed aspartame to infant mice and found that it produced the same kind of brain damage that monosodium glutamate causes.
Dr. Olney started studying the effects of aspartame in 1970. He says he was alarmed when the rodents developed brain tumors.
It indicates that if there's an adverse effect, a serious adverse effect in the animals, and if that adverse effect is absolutely proven in the animal research, then it should not be approved for human use.
Dr. Olney took his findings to the Food and Drug Administration as Searle, the company that developed aspartame, pushed to get the new sweetener to market. The FDA looked at the research and in 1975 put aspartame's approval on hold. It set up an independent panel of doctors to study aspartame. In 1980, that public board of inquiry unanimously ruled aspartame should not go on the market. We tracked down that FDA commissioner, Dr. Arthur Hall Hayes. Hi, Dr. Hayes.
Yes?
My name's Aline Sergani with Fox 5 in Washington.
Yes.
Can we ask you a few questions about aspartame?
FDA has all the information you need.
Yes, but sir, you were the FDA commissioner when aspartame was approved. And so we'd like to ask you a few questions.
No, I really have no comments. All the information is available to the Food and Drug Administration.
Sir, don't you think it's your responsibility as the FDA commissioner when aspartame was approved to answer some of our questions?
Not now. I'm no longer commissioner of the FDA.
Do you think the public was ever put at risk? Sir, was the public ever put at risk? Sir, do you think he put the public at risk, sir?
Yes, I do.
Senator Howard Metzenbaum has his own concerns.
I can say that I was dissatisfied with the manner in which aspartame was approved.
So Senator Metzenbaum requested a review of the FDA's approval process.
I have a kind of recollection of it that sort of left a bad taste in my mouth. And it wasn't from aspartame.
To understand the senator's concerns, you have to realize what this little blue packet is really worth. Searle sells millions of dollars of aspartame each year. It's used in nearly 6,000 products, including Diet Coke. Searle had a vested interest in keeping aspartame on the market, and the American public had a craving for a calorie-free sweetener. The Senate's public hearings took place in 1987, but nothing came of Metzenbaum's worries. The committee decided not to request more studies and left aspartame on the market.
I think that there were a lot of politics involved in its being approved.
A lot of people share the senator's viewpoint, so Fox 5 obtained these campaign contribution records. They show that Searle made contributions to several senators involved in keeping aspartame on the market. And that's not all. We also learned that several federal officials were investigated for possible ties to Searle.
I think the chairman of the FDA wound up in having some sort of economic relationship beneficial to himself with Searle Manufacturing, who at that time owned the rights to aspartame.
The issue is really not an issue of science, it's an issue of politics.
The Monsanto webpage links sites belonging to the American Diabetes Association and the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation. Both organizations have published articles supporting NutraSweet. Monsanto does not mention its large contributions to both nonprofit groups. The Department of Health and Human Services has identified 91 symptoms by complainants attributed to aspartame use. The #1 reported symptom is headaches. Some of the other most reported symptoms are dizziness, mood changes, nausea, and stomach pain.
Absolutely, I think the FDA should revisit this issue.
But for now, the FDA has no plans to revisit the issue.
My friends, the information that you are about to witness from all of my years of research is the most important. It's been hidden in plain view the entire time. This is the ultimate secret, and it's about to be exposed. I have hundreds of government documents, textbooks, white papers, where for over 80 years, the elite of the Western world have talked about adulterating food and water to sicken and sterilize the population for the purpose of eugenics. It's all covered in the book Eco Science, written by the White House science czar John P. Holdren, where they talk about a planetary police state to carry out the forced sterilization. They also talk about covert systems in the water and food to sterilize the population. Now, this was written decades ago, before he was White House science czar. Now, suddenly, the stuff in this book is all over the news. They're selling it to the public as if it's a good thing. You see here before you what an average person would buy when they went shopping at the store. Not everything here is bad for you, but much of it has compounds and artificial chemicals that have been added that are extremely toxic and bad for your health, and they have known this the entire time, and they have approved them for use. Let's start with aspartame. You cannot go to the grocery store now and buy any type of even regular sugar gum that hasn't had aspartame added to it. In the 1970s, Searle tried to get it approved, and they couldn't. It took them 3 separate times because in their own studies with monkeys, large portions of them that were fed it died and contracted cancer. Now we have mainstream news articles, and the EU has done a major study finding lower birth weights, early birth, and yes, miscarriages from women that drink aspartame-laden soft drinks like Coke Zero. What is aspartame? It is the fecal matter of the E. coli bacteria. They took it and genetically engineered it. They can feed it toxic waste, and then it defecates aspartame. And it has so many bad health effects, it's just unspeakable. This is being done by design. It's also very, very addictive. But let's just go ahead and move away from aspartame and talk about McDonald's and chicken McNuggets. Now, I remember a decade ago or so reading health advisories claiming that a form of plastic that's used in silly putty, basically a type of silicone, was in the chicken McNuggets, but also in many other TV dinners and other foods. It is illegal in every other nation in the world to add these chemicals to the food, but it's not in the United States. The big secret is all of this was done by design by the FDA. Look at all the drugs they've approved, and then it comes out later that they knowingly approve them when these drugs are causing heart attacks and cancer. In the Nuremberg trials, it came out that the Nazis were adding sodium fluoride to the water supply in the labor camps and death camps to make the population more docile and controllable. There had been hundreds of university studies before Hitler even came to power. This is a form of forced medication. They admit that 1 part per million of sodium fluoride more than doubles the chance of bone cancer in boys and men. As the public became educated in the last few decades, the government and industry's response was to not just put it in water, but to start adding it to thousands of products like children's water that's mixed with their formula or with their cereal. They started adding as much as 900 parts per million in things like powdered eggs. It causes reductions in IQ. It increases sterility or lack of fertility, and it's being added to so many of the daily staples that we consume. We'll get back to food additives in a moment. But first, I wanted to look at genetically modified organisms. Did you know for many years the people have been eating cloned beef and pork, and now they're expanding out into other forms of meat? Let's look at salmon first. Major university studies conclusively have proven that the type of genetically modified salmon that is actually a cross species, they've mixed other animal genes in with it, that when this fish is introduced with wild natural salmon, within 40 generations, all of the natural salmon are extinct. And the FDA approved this. And they're going to allow it to be released into the wild that isn't even a salmon. It is a cross-species chimera. It is a mixture like something out of the island of Dr. Moreau, something out of a nightmare. More than 85% of the corn now consumed in the United States, and it's also starting to trend that way in Europe and Canada, is genetically engineered. It grows its own pesticide within the corn kernels so that insects won't eat it. If the insects can't eat this and live, what do you think is going to happen when lab rats or humans eat it? We have literally hundreds of studies showing that not just Monsanto's, but other major GMO companies' corn, that's the majority of corn we're now eating today in the United States, has been linked to organ failure in lab animals. The studies also show massive increases in sterility in rats and guinea pigs that are fed not just GMO corn, but GMO cotton seeds. Studies in India, Germany, and the United States have conclusively shown that when they feed the cotton seeds left over from the cotton crop from these genetically modified varieties, that the cows are having miscarriages, they are having low birth weights, or in many cases, they're simply dying. And what is in most processed foods? Genetically modified cottonseed oil. Major studies are also showing that genetically engineered crops are killing honeybees and monarch butterflies. The very genetic code of the planet is being butchered in a hostile corporate takeover. Many years ago, an executive from Monsanto was quoted in National Geographic as saying that that is their program, that they want to basically have their crops and their organisms take over the entire biosphere of this planet. And the major genetic engineer companies have focused mainly on 8 major food crops. Now they're expanding out into hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other plants, literally changing the genetic code of the planet. This is a genetic dictatorship. This is genetic vandalism. recombinant bovine growth hormone in your milk, making 8-year-old girls go into puberty when they should be going into puberty at 12 or 13. Silicone in chicken McNuggets and hundreds of other processed foods. Aspartame, that is the feces of genetically engineered bacteria that has incredible health problems that have been proven. Think for yourself. It goes on and on. ABC News, this goes back 4 years ago. Viral meat spray, advancing food safety. They spray a live virus on the meat to supposedly kill the bacteria. This is a live vaccine they spray on most of the meat you're consuming that you're buying from the store. It gets even worse. The petroleum distillates, or toxic waste that's left over from petroleum refineries that refine oil into gasoline, they take these tens of millions of pounds of toxic waste that's left over, the fluoride, the mercury, the lead, and they dump it on crops as supposed fertilizer. And what do crops like tomatoes and corn and potatoes do? They pull in all of those toxins out of the ground. In fact, scientists for many years have used plants to actually detoxify areas that have been contaminated. And those plants are pulling all of this up, and then you are eating it. That's why the Washington Post reported in January of 2008 that a major study found that nearly a third of the 55 popular brand name foods and beverage products were filled with mercury. This is affecting all of us. This is hurting everyone. Many different forms of cancer are growing by thousands of percentage points. Diabetes, all these different diseases. And in major studies, it's all been linked to the toxic additives that are in our food, our water. And I haven't even had time to get into MSG. I mean, I've interviewed brain surgeons, neurologists, scientists. I mean, it just devastates the brain. It's an excitotoxin. It destroys the liver, and it is in tens of thousands of products. We can say no. We can stand up. But if you've got a neighbor giving fluoride water to their baby, please go over and warn them. If you got a neighbor that's sitting there eating MSG-filled chips, one after the other, warn them. You've got a responsibility. If you know people that are feeding processed foods filled with GMO, warn them.